When I was in business years ago, I was always your picture of being very dynamic. I needed things to happen, and I needed things to happen now. So I was a constant thorn in the side of management. I was in sales and it was high pressure, and it was hard enough getting the sales, but then to have to deal with red tape, deliveries, indifference, it used to frustrate the hell out of me. Stress led to my illness that I subsequently suffered from. I have no doubt about it. Sure, I was overweight, but stress. And of course, people tell you when you're on that journey that your priorities are all wrong. But you don't listen because, hey, you've got to make targets. You've got to put bread on the table and eat quite a lot of it in my case. Carbs are bad. And at the time as well, I suppose you're young and you don't know any better and you're driven. But if only you'd taken the time to listen to those people, especially the older ones who get written off, funny enough, in the Western world, and they are revered in the Eastern world. Probably less so now, as the Western world has influenced the Eastern world, probably for the worst. But it's so important to realise, if you're lucky, you've got your 70. If you're lucky. And what are you going to make of that time? And there was one or two of the management who at the time, if I could have throttled them and fucked them through the window and gotten away with it, I would have done it. It was this slow thing. And why get upset? And I'm going, why get upset? You're paying me to do this job. I've gotten this connection going. I've closed this deal. Do the fucking business to completion. And it was adrenaline and very satisfying when everything did come to the right end. But if I had listened more perhaps to the management, who weren't exactly sacking me, quite the opposite. It was, take your time. What can we do about it? The customer may be screaming. Now, in one case, it cost me a very large account. And I had the customer ring my manager, who was a lot older than me, so that the customer could see for themselves, listen, it's not me, it's the system here. It's supply. Here's the ultimate boss. You two work it out amongst yourselves. And during the course of that conversation, the customer was more and more irate. And the manager basically told him not where to go and how to get there, but his attitude was, well, if you want to go even higher than me and go to the corporation itself, you go and do that. I heard those words, overheard them coming out of the office. And I also knew in that moment I had lost probably 150k, £150,000, because they had given me at least that much and more up until that point. And sure enough, we lost the account. Perhaps the boss went home and kicked himself, but I doubt it. And you know, as life goes on, I think, well, you know, be grateful for what you have. He had a car under his arse. He had more than that business to be going on with. Of course, my life was revolving around those accounts and that business. But perhaps he was right. And as I get older, it's the kind of old bull, young bull thing. I'm kind of going, what's the point? What's the point? And you come to a point as well when you're kind of on your last, perhaps 20 something years, if you're lucky, and you know because you've lived X amount of life already, how quickly that's going to go. It is going to shoot by like a hot snot. It's going to be grease lightning. And then all you're getting your knickers in a knot. No one's going to give a fuck. Now, on that happy note, I just thought I'd say, listen, slow down a bit. That's what I'm talking about. It's about taking time for you. And you are the most important person in the world. Now, you could say, well, that's very selfish. No, not at all. You are no use to anybody if you're moping around, your moods are swinging up and down, you're carrying yourself in a morose manner, everything is negative, the world is negative, your life is negative, you don't like your weight, you don't like your wages, you hate the government. I've heard it all before because I'm that soldier as well. And we will still do that kind of thing. But it is so crucial that you take time for you, because you're no use to anybody if you're in that mind frame. In fact, you're a drain on them, and you'll find people will avoid you if you become the, as my kids used to watch years ago, remember the donkey Eeyore, right? The miserable fucker. And I'm distancing myself, despite the irony of being on here, but I've really kind of compartmentalized social media. I'll put stuff up, but I won't go around looking to see, I won't be worrying as to whether anybody likes it or not. It'll usually be a creative thing. I'll bang something up because it's in me and I want to get it out there. But speaking of social media, there's this guy, he comes on TikTok, if you pardon the expression, and his life is fucking miserable. And you know what? He wants to share it with you. Now, he's got depression, and possibly chronic depression. And I know what it's like to be depressed. And I've put my days of depression long behind me. They get replaced generally now with bewilderment at times. But the depression for years now, for a good few years, has been gone. But what he wants to do is, I don't know, get views out of it, get validation out of it. You switch on this fucking TikToky and he's there. And he's telling you about his life, or his non-life really. And how he was on a train today. And he saw a couple and they were holding hands. And how he wished that somebody'd be holding his hands. And you know what else? Yesterday, I did absolutely nothing. More and more are my days turning into nothing. I'm here in me cardigan, me good old faithful cardi, and I'm looking forlornly into the camera at you, and I hope that perhaps you give me a grain of your sympathy and bolster my wishy-washy, non-fucking existence. Somebody take this "see you next Tuesday" and stick him in fucking Gaza, right, where there's doctors and nurses breaking their bollocks. They can't even get sleep. They are removing what's left of children, or they're removing shrapnel from what's left of children and people. And they're surrounded by screams and the noise of fucking drones and worse. But he wants to tell you about how fucking sad he is. There's life for you, mate. Get your fucking arse on the plane over to Gaza. Or go crawl around in Ukraine. That'll give you the meaning of life. And I suppose if you do look at, say, the likes of Viktor Frankl, The Meaning of Life, was that the book? Was it the book? I don't know. Man's Search for Whatever. That's a good book because it means, like, essentially you're here to have a purpose. The ones that managed, and not a lot of them did, but managed to survive the camps, death camps, concentration camps, were those that had a purpose. They had a vision. They'd something to do. I suppose you've got to work out what your purpose is before it's too late. But I would just say, again, there's no harm, by the way, in having a little bit of I did this and I did that and I drank a cup of Earl Grey tea today. Watched the cat outside the windowsill. It's all right, as long as your whole fucking life doesn't revolve around a social validation loop to bolster this negative fucking... No. Let's differentiate here. That guy is a waste of fucking space. Here's a bag. Put it over your head and breathe in. Do us all a favour. Now, as it happens, of course, you scroll and you scroll. But when you do linger in the misery zone, Jesus Christ, someone get a fucking hold of that. Prick. Maybe I'll look at the camera a bit sad, like. I like me tea. You're the best thing going on and you're no use to anybody unless you take a bit of time out for yourself. Perhaps find a purpose. And your purpose is generally linked to something you're good at. Now, perhaps you're an artist, or an author, or an engineer, policeman, whatever it is. Now, there's jobs we find ourselves in and we detest. If you're lucky, you find a little niche, like what I did, eventually. And it just fits me, it fits what talent I have and my time frame. It's not the most lucrative job I've ever had, but it pays bills, and then some. So find yourself something, and don't be a bloody burden to other people. Like I had this, in the last day or two, I had a medical on Monday. It didn't go 100%. But then again, it wasn't that bad, or they would have been on the phone by now. So I could deal with it. But it was a bit of a downer at the time. Going, fuck. The next day, which was yesterday, I had this giddiness. I just went into town by myself. I could have hung out, drank coffee, and bought the cat some treats. Bought myself a pair of reading spectacles. They're somewhere. I've bloody lost them already. And then today was just it was a bit like your man. I began to go to bed a bit early. I think I had a bad night as well. I'd sweated the bed. Last time I did that was when I had COVID. So I think I have a bit of a bug. That's basically it. But you can go up and you can go down. You can go in and out of loops. But it is important. So I like my little bit of space here. Give yourself some space. And ask yourself this question. Suppose that thing that you want to do and you haven't achieved it yet. Or maybe you achieved it in the past and now it has eluded you. Time has moved on. I actually saw a good interview. This will labour the point. With a guy who used to be he is Lamal. You might remember an 80s band, if you're sad enough, called Kajagoogoo. And he joined the band and he pretty much was the face and image of the band. And I don't know whether they had a fit of stupidity or jealousy, the rest of the band. But they were beginning to happen. They'd one or two hits, and they fired him unceremoniously. And he was devastated, but he bounced back within a year. He had a big hit, which still outsells, in streaming terms, Too Shy. Too Shy to Shy, remember that? And the song he had a hit with was Never Ending Story, which was from a movie and was produced by Giorgio Moroder, which, by the way, in terms of downloads, to this day, is twice as much, because he knows because of his royalty checks, as Too Shy. Actually, they had a song, another one called, which I loved, because it brings me right back to when I started to really enjoy things. It was called Utabia. Check it out, 1983, Kajagoogoo. Subsequently, they became Kaj. But anyway, they sacked him, and he had this hit, and then the hits kind of stopped coming, and he had about 3 or 4 years where he just did nothing. And then one day he asked himself a question. He said, if my life is only happy when I'm making hit records and being a pop star, and my life is miserable, which is most of the time when I haven't achieved that, what kind of life do I have? He came to the conclusion that he had a wasted life. And you know, there's a lot of wisdom in that. So, as I said, if you've got your heart set on something, maybe you had it, or maybe you still haven't achieved it, and your life keeps going, I should have been that writer, I should have been that broadcaster, I should have been, but it's getting lost in should have beens, and you should be just happy with what you have, which is hopefully first and foremost your health, and if it's compromised, well, at least, you know, for now, live it a day at a time. But if you're constantly going comparison games and social media games, and you will do your fucking nutting. So how about saying, okay, I haven't got what I'd set my heart on, but so what I do have is time, and I'm just going to be happy in that time. Perhaps I'll still play the game I'm interested in, realising I'm not top of the pops, but I'm still involved in the work. Not necessarily getting the adulation. And by the way, that adulation, as anybody will tell you that's been there, is pretty much a double-edged sword. A lot of it is the loss of your privacy, which you don't know what you got till it's gone. And so this circle of infinity nonsensical bollocks comes to an end after 18 minutes and 14 seconds. I don't know if it's made any difference to your life. Probably not. But hey, we're bathed in the honey glow, which I kind of like. And I think that's calming. Don't you? It's very calming. And just to be you. And be grateful for being you. Oh, the cat's outside going, meow. Listen, can you hear him? I think he's looking to be let in to my studio. Charlie? Charlie's been acting weird recently. He's getting old. Well, he's also known as Marvin. Charlie needs me, if nobody else does. You know, that was another thing as well. It's you change your attitude. You know, I remember my phone used to be constantly ringing, constantly, back in the business world. It used to drive me fucking mad. There wasn't enough hours in the day. And then sometimes I'd go, great, people are looking for me. People want me. You know, you just kind of flip it, you know, flip your lid from lose to win. You know, great. You know, I even remember, and I did, like when it was announced I had to have heart surgery. I remember saying to one of my kids, great, I get to feel what it's like. Now, of course, it was bravado. But in the talking to yourself, I said, I get the operation. Great. And you could say, oh, look at you, only kidding yourself. But no, if you instruct yourself, nothing neither good nor bad, and thinking makes it so. So look, you might be feeling shy, but just tell yourself you're feeling great. God, I do go on.